Bespoken, tailor-made truths for a discerning body. A weekly podcast produced by Chapel Hill Bible Church. Today's series, The Best Reasons to Run from Jesus, Part 2, Addressing Scientific Claims.
All right, welcome back to Bespoken. This is a weekly podcast that we are doing for Chapel Hill Bible Church. And Bespoken is what, Jay?
Well, they're tailor-made truths for a discerning ecclesia, which, Ryan, do you know what that means?
I do know what that means. Do you know what that means, Jay?
I do. It's Greek for church, body.
It is.
And so I'm 2 degrees away from the actual word body,
Mm-hmm.
but ecclesia.
Mm-hmm.
Kahal is the Hebrew word.
Mm-hmm.
So today we're going to continue on with our series talking about...
Well, the cheeky line is the best reasons to run from Jesus.
Which we don't really think they're good reasons
Right.
to not follow Jesus. But they're the ones often brought up as
Mm-hmm.
kind of the presenting issues people have with the Christian faith.
And so this week, we're going to be talking about science.
We are.
And to help us do that, we have a special guest.
Dr. Mary
That's
Doctor.
it, yeah.
Come on.
Let's get it straight.
So,
Let's go.
probably many of you know Mary, but Mary, introduce yourself. What do you do? Why are you here?
Oh, that's
Not,
very
and I don't mean that
philosophical question there,
existentially.
Jay. Yeah, okay.
We did philosophy last week. I
Oh,
mean
right.
it more in the, why are you in this room
This is
for
the
this
science
Bespoken?
conversation.
Uh-huh.
We aren't going to talk about philosophy at all.
Not directly, but
Of
it
course,
all
yeah.
kind of
course
plays in together.
Mhm.
Just being a little cheeky myself.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a scientific method to being cheeky?
Absolutely, there is.
Hmm.
You can
course,
scientific
yes.
method anything.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
As Jay mentioned, I'm Mary McManamy. I am married to Kyle McManamy. We have been members here at the Bible Church for 7 years. This is very cool. I think that officially makes us local by by terms.
local.
Yeah. Yeah,
And Kyle
totally
is
local.
known in terms of the bespoken fashion thing for
Oh,
his
yes.
bow ties, right?
Yes, his bow ties and pocket square game, and the handkerchief in the back pocket. Perhaps
Yeah.
you've noticed.
Yep.
Yeah.
But for today, you're doing kind of the female equivalent of, is that jade? I mean, is that?
Oh, it's yes, it's no. These are emeralds. This was actually the
Emerald.
necklace that Audrey Hepburn
Oh,
wore. Yeah.
okay,
Mhm.
good. So we're
Yeah.
serious today.
Fantastic.
And I can see
fantastic
Kyle
singer.
wearing that. Don't
Yeah.
you? Don't you think you could see
Audrey
Kyle
was a
wearing that
singer,
at some
right?
point?
Mm.
No.
Okay.
Actress, dancer.
That's a millennial for you. All right, so let's get started here. Mary, you are a professional scientist.
Yes, I'm a chemist.
Chemist.
I did not say that, but I am a chemist.
Yes, you are a chemist. You teach
Mhm.
at.
Elon University. I've been
Mhm.
teaching there for 6 years. Love it. Go Phoenix.
I didn't know that was their mascot.
Rising Phoenix. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
And it's quite a commute for her. It's, you might say, an elongated
Mm.
commute back and forth.
Well played, Jay.
Yep. So science is brought up as a big reason a lot of folks struggle with the truth claims of Christianity. And so I want to talk about maybe some of the major fault lines in that conversation and what believers need to be aware of and thinking about in order to have conversations where you can get past some of those obstacles to get on to who is Jesus. We had a great message this past Sunday by Paul Gould, I thought,
Oh,
on
yes.
just how to clear the brush so we
Mhm.
can get to Jesus.
Paul was pure gold.
Yes, he
Awesome.
was. Wow. So kudos to you, Ryan, for that. So then I think we also need to talk about how Christians shouldn't just reject science, but they also have a responsibility to respect it as far as it goes as something God has given us as a gift.
Yeah.
So let's talk about all of that. So Mary, what are some of the main kind of first objections the scientific community or the people who are thoughtful, who think about science, bring up as obstacles to Christianity?
So I think we're operating in an environment now where the assumption is just that science is the only way to truth. Bottom line, we're not even at the point where we're trying to build our case as science, so to speak. We're just operating under that assumption. And I think the notion that we need to realize as scientists, and maybe I'm jumping the gun a little bit too much, but there's this notion that science is pure and it's untouchable, and it is the cold hard evidence in your hands of what we know to be true about the physical universe that helps explain what we experience in reality. We're getting at those fundamental ancient questions that Paul Gould raised yesterday. What is the nature of reality? What is being? What is life? What is motion? Right? And as scientists, we get to answer those questions or attempt to answer those questions. And we sort of forget the fact that science is being done by humans who are indeed fallible, have objectives, have moral frameworks from which they're working. They have longings for credibility and funding and all the things along the line. There's actually a book one of the questions that was posed to me before coming here was some references.
Yes,
There's
give
a book
resources
called Never Pure, Stephen Chapin. And the tagline of the book, which I think is just so great, never pure historical studies of science as if it was produced by people with bodies situated in time, space, culture, and society, and struggling for credibility and authority. And that's where scientists are coming from. Yeah, I think I jumped the gun a little bit.
No, you didn't. But... So why you have these colleagues, you're aware of your field. Why is it hard for them to admit that they functionally live in a world that science isn't always measuring, it's not predictable, it's not regular? Why are they not kind of backing up and saying, I may not be able to explain this with Trinitarian Christianity, but I live just day to day in a metaphysical kind of way?
Yeah, I mean, the metaphysics gets a little tricky, right? We can't perform a well-controlled experiment to explain things of the supernatural realm. And so from a perspective of science, you're looking towards the evidence, you're looking towards the data. And if there's no data to suggest that it's true, it must not be true. Even though functionally we do operate under a lot of premises that say, okay, I don't have the data yet, operative word. It's just a matter of time before I get there, and I can build up my knowledge and understanding and build upon the other things that other people are doing, and we can collectively come together towards this one universal truth that's given to us at the hands of science.
That's interesting, the word yet there. You could also kind of say that there's a hope or an expectation, kind of a faith in the science itself as uncovering truth, right? That it's going to happen. Yeah. So.
I don't know a grad student out there who is sitting at their bench top going, please, 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 please let it be true. Something come out of this that I'm looking for, that I want to be true, that is hopefully going to be true. And you build your life on the hope of finding something that's true, because about 98% of what you do is actually failure in the day-to-day reality.
But we don't hear that.
But you don't actually hear that. Yeah, every scientist knows it's true. And as a professor, those are kind of the hard truths I have to tell my students of, welcome to the real world of science. It actually kind of stinks every day in some ways, but you live for those moments where you get that little glimmer of hope, that little piece of information that fuels the next experiment that leads you down that other path and towards the hopeful big discovery.
Yeah, and the reason why I bring that up is because it seems like the main conflict is between a hope or a faith in something that you can hold in your hand, something that's seen, versus the faith that we're called to, which is an unseen reality that we're hoping for that is to come. So that's the only reason why that word stood out to me, that maybe they're similar in ways.
Oh, yeah. Well, I told this to Kyle when we were early married, and it was something that was kind of struck him in a way that he hadn't really thought of before, but I said it actually takes more faith for me to be a science than it does to be a Christian, because I'm sitting there, I'm taking it on faith that what I'm doing is the right way of doing things, the right way of approaching this question, and I'm taking it on faith that my controls are actually controls, and my experimental group is actually my experimental group, and I'm testing what I think I'm testing, and then I'm taking it on faith that the data is the true representation of what is physically happening in this scenario, and that my analysis of it is true. And so there are a lot of steps along the scientific method where actually you have to evoke quite a bit of
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm an armchair scientist here, literally.
That's a really nice armchair too.
Yes, thank you. But I had to do a lot of reading for this group of nerdy pastors I'm in called the Center for Pastor Theologians.
Did you love it, Jay?
I actually did. It was for 3 years we had to do this project because we were getting funded from this big grant company. So it was super helpful for me. And this, our church has a lot of scientists and medical professionals and whatnot. So it was very helpful for me. But one of the big assumptions in this whole conversation is that for something to be real, it has to have spatial and temporal qualities. That's a fundamental assumption that, again, scientists, but also there's just lots of non-scientists that think about science, but that's just an assumption.
Christians too.
And Christians, that if something is real, it has to have spatial and temporal qualities and be regular, right? And that is something you have to be able to question. Again, we're not anywhere near like Trinitarian Christianity is absolutely true, but we have to be able to say, look, friend, you've got to give space for the fact that something could be real but not be spatial, temporal, and regular.
Right. I think, so this was something I was thinking about on my drive here. I think preachers and scientists actually come into some similar dilemmas. And maybe dilemma is not the appropriate word for that. But we stand and we tell truths, right? And we're telling truths about the physical world. You're telling truths about the physical world and also the spiritual world. But nobody wants it to stop there. Everybody comes to you and is like, okay, what does this mean for the rest of my life? What does this mean for my practical application? Everybody comes to science and says, okay, so what does this mean about how I should behave? What does this mean about moral and ethical issues? What does this mean about philosophical issues? That we always want science to take it that extra mile and give it the application point of how do I behave? What does this mean for my everyday reality? And science can't do that.
Yeah,
we need to bring in philosophy and theology, and
which it's almost unavoidable. I'm listening to this book on Audible by Noel Harari. I think if I'm maybe he just slaughtered his name, but it's called Sapiens: A History of Humankind. And so he's an atheist trying to show the history of humanity and assumes evolution and all these things to be true. Or a humanist, I should say. That's another topic we'll have to talk about. We'll get to it in just a second in a very small way. But he's trying to say there's no overall moral grid, but then the next paragraph, he'll say things that are absolutely infused with moral assumptions. And I just think that's very, very telling. You just can't avoid the language of good or bad or all these other... making judgment calls, which assume morality.
And scientists or not all scientists, but there tends to be this practice of forgetting that in order to take it to that next level, you automatically impose your lens, your worldview upon the thing, upon the set of data that is supposedly pure, right? You automatically impose your lens on it and make these claims about it, to which the data doesn't take it that far.
Yeah.
Right? That's you taking it that far.
Yeah. All right. So one of the specific things people always go to real quickly is Genesis 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
origins of the universe, origins of humanity.
Yep. And so sometimes let's say I am open to there being a metaphysical reality, but Christianity I can't do because your story starts in a way that I cannot let it start
The
from what I know.
supernatural. Yeah. Mhm.
So help other believers think through just wading into that conversation.
Mhm. I think this is a really good place for me to say that there's the two-way street here, and you alluded to this in the introduction of scientists automatically discrediting Christianity, Christianity automatically discrediting science, and thinking that on both sides you have this forced dichotomy that the two are mutually exclusive, and they're not. But yes, when we come to the Genesis 1-2 situation, when we come to that, we actually, what we don't see is a necessary conflict. It's not a necessary conflict. The necessary conflict, and this actually comes from here's another
Plantinga. This
Alvin
is a good
Plantinga,
book.
where the conflict really lies: science, religion, and naturalism. Yeah,
You're not talking about a bunch of people in Northern California walking around a beach with
of
too little
course not.
clothing on.
Of
Okay,
course not.
just to make sure.
Yeah.
This is a worldview.
Yes. Oh yes, yeah.
Okay.
Not to be confused with the
You gotta
natural
be clear about
lifestyle,
these things,
right?
Ryan.
Also,
think
not
you
to
just
be
like talking about
confused with
California.
natural food types and
Yes.
The whole.
Are there
non-GMO,
unnatural
whatever.
food types?
Jay, that's an interesting conversation. I think
Okay,
we might
for a
want to
different
save
time.
it. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll save it.
All right.
Anyways, so to get back to Plantinga's point, the actual necessary conflict lies with naturalism, right? This if science, if we can know things by physical means, right, then that automatically means that knowing things by non-physical means or any possibility of the supernatural God is out the window, right? So that's the necessary conflict. With science and Christianity, I don't really see a necessary conflict. There are maybe some alleged conflicts which come in the conversation of the Big Bang and evolution and those sorts of things. Those scientific assertions that are based on evidence. We do have evidence to suggest those things are true, and thinking that is somehow not coherent with what Scripture is saying, and they're actually complementarian.
Oh, I like that word.
Thank you. Yeah.
So we'll tackle this summer because some of you are wondering, well, if I have a literal interpretation of the Bible, then Genesis 1 is saying that the universe, this world, was created in 6 24-hour periods. So this summer, we will look at that. That could be a possibility, but it could be a possibility with a high view of Scripture as a inerrantist who wants to take the Bible literally, and by that we mean what the author intended. It could be that there's other ways of viewing Genesis 1, which would then massively open the door to looking at some of the scientific evidence we have for an older universe.
Can I just make just speaking from a scientist perspective? So I very much hold the Bible to be true, given out of God's love. Yes. So what I'm about to say is in no way intended to conflict with that.
Should we be nervous?
I'm a little nervous.
Okay, we'll see.
Okay, great. I think Jay, your face right now. Okay. Well, now I've completely lost what I was going to say. No, okay, I've got it back. Okay. If I am going to claim to believe in God, who is creator, who is unlimited, all good, perfectly righteous, perfectly just, capable of all things, except authoring evil, right?
Oh, that's a whole other topic.
Which is a whole other topic. God does not author evil. But if I'm going to claim that I believe in that God, then I have to be able to believe, or at least make an extension on that belief, that God can create and bring about his created order in whatever way he
That's right.
so chooses.
Yeah.
Which leaves a lot of things open. And the Genesis 1-2 picture leaves a lot for interpretation.
Yeah.
Right?
Which we'll get to this summer.
So
don't go on all those vacations and just flake out on church. So we're going to take a bunch of hot topics.
Yeah.
this summer, and creation and origins will be one of them.
Hot topics.
Hot or yes? How are we going to say it, Ryan? Do it.
I
Come
don't know.
on.
There's a Jim Gaffigan skit talking about hot pockets, where again it says hot pockets, and we're going to talk about hot topics. So there we go.
Good job, Jay.
All right, so Christians shouldn't fear science.
Not at all.
What we should discourage is naturalism,
Right.
materialism. Sometimes it's talked about, where or other people are now calling it scientism,
Right.
where scientists themselves go beyond their own claims and are creating philosophical worldview claims that go way beyond what they do in terms of the scientific method.
Right.
And they're not being super honest about that. So much of this is getting them to be honest.
Which, just to kind of color what it is, that's actually bad science to go outside the realm of the scientific method. And
And so should Christians be good scientists then?
oh, absolutely, no question. We should be the best scientists. I think this is true of any discipline, no matter what your discipline, whatever your field. You should be the best one of those. And it is my Christian faith that informs my science. I get to understand things about the physical world that the average person doesn't fully understand. And that draws me to worship him more. That draws me to desire to know him more.
Yeah.
And one of the ways of knowing him more is by knowing his creation and understanding how it all works.
And some of the more historically important theologians were also scientists. Isaac
Yes.
Newton, Pascal, Blaise Pascal.
John Dalton, I think we're forgetting the father of modern chemistry here. Jay.
Who is who? Who?
John Dalton.
Oh, of
I
course,
just-
right? How could I forget?
You leave that
Although
out?
I will say that some people say Antoine Lavoisier was the father of modern chemistry.
yeah, of course.
I assert John Dalton.
I completely agree with you.
Thank
Very
you.
honestly.
Right. I
Yep.
mean, the most impactful statement of all science is the atom exists.
Ha!
Boom.
Wow. Literally, boom.
Literally.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're not talking about splitting atoms here.
No, we're not.
Yeah.
And I don't want to fuse this with other
No,
topics.
of course not. Yeah.
Okay, good.
It
So
would create a fissure.
yes. All right, I feel bonded already.
Now, is it a covalent or an ionic or metallic?
Hey, watch your
bond? Oh,
language, okay?
excuse me.
So here's the summing up of this whole thing. We are not, our enemy is not science, it's naturalism. It's the assumption that things can't exist if they don't have, physical properties or time properties or regularity. And we should value science. Guys, you're gonna have to do some of your homework too and read about these things. And then come and talk with Mary when you see her at church. Just, pull her aside and
Yeah. Can I make one
Talk-
comment
yeah.
about that last thing that you said? Do your homework. If you want to talk to someone who has an issue with Christianity because of science, you need to actually know the science.
Yeah.
You need to go and do your reading, or at least have a conversation with them and ask them, okay, can you describe to me the data that is really the sticking point for you on accepting Christianity as true? And, you kind of perform a little bit of a scientific method Jedi mind trick on it.
Wow.
Like, this is not the data you're looking for kind of situation.
By the way, what was the thing that happened that made you say, I'm going to stay at the Bible church when you were first visiting?
Oh, you quoted Yoda in
Yeah.
your sermon.
Yeah.
In a sermon on stage on Sunday mornings.
So, yeah,
And I'm pretty sure you did the voice.
maybe. So one
Sure,
thing that doing your homework will do is
Find that.
we haven't gotten into like, okay, what is Adam and Eve real, and what does that talk about in terms of Jesus and original sin and all of that? And genetics seems to say that there were 10,000 humans or human-like creatures and not just an original pair. So we don't have time to get into all of that, but you need to get into these things because that will come up with the thoughtful, even armchair
Right.
scientists.
And know that there are gaps. there are gaps in the.
Well, there's one at the mall.
Oh,
actually.
totally. Yeah,
I think
you need to fall into it. Apparently,
Yeah.
That's an old slogan from the Gap. Fall into the Gap. Anyways.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Ryan, any final comments, thoughts?
The atom is real.
The atom
Absolutely,
is real.
it is.
John Dalton.
The atom exists.
The atom or the atom?
I would say both.
Hmm.
I
Mm.
would
We'll
say
leave it
both.
at that.
Okay.
See you next time. When we tackle quite possibly the main reason, the biggest reason, which is what, Jay? To run away from Jesus.
Yeah, if the bottom line reason is
Underneath it all.
people do not want to lose control. So that's what we'll talk about next time.